This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It's Monday, the 20th day of January 2014. I'm Doug Hagmann, co-host along with my son Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, folks. I'm excited to be here. You're for a great program, 3 hours of unbiased, uncensored news, information, analysis, information that is, well, you're not going to get elsewhere, we believe. You're listening to the only show where the news is presented to you in 3D. We look well beyond the headlines, the bylines, a fog of disinformation. And for the new listeners, and thank you very much for sending so many emails this weekend, new listeners from mainland China to the Philippines to South America to Central America to all across North America. Thank you for checking in with us. For the new listeners, we broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. You can find us on the Internet. Our home base is HomelandSecurityUS.com. That's HomelandSecurityUS.com. We're also simulcast by the good graces of the Christians United Broadcasting Network there. You can tune us in high-quality audio at the Hagmann and HagmannReport.com. You got to spell out the word "and," also 2 N's on the name Hagmann. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your belief, your trust in us as we walk through this minefield of current events together. I want to mention that portions of today's broadcast is brought to you by audibletrial.com, audible.com actually. Get a free audiobook and download it at, well, our very special, super secret portal to audible.com is on our website at HomelandSecurityUS.com. Go to our website, navigate down to the Audible icon, click on that, and that'll take you to your gateway to over 150,000 titles to choose from. Listen to your favorite book on your iPhone, your Android, your Kindle, your MP3 player, your computer, even perhaps an empty tin can with a string. I mean, they got it all. That's audibletrial.com/CFP radio. If you choose not to go to our website, that's audibletrial.com/CFP radio. And with that, let's bring in Joe. He's been studiously working here in the studio for a while. Joe, hello.
Glad to be here. It was a good weekend. Got some research done and some relaxation done. And research running in circles again today, but getting some stuff done along the way too. So it's great to be back this week. And we have some guests that we're talking with and not ready to announce because we have no dates set except for one. Next Thursday, January 30th, we'll be joined by Nathan Liao, and just wanted to mention that now. And we got it scheduled in there, but many more guests to come. As we.
Yeah, it's going to be for the whole show, right?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, Nathan's always a great guy. He's a great guy, good guest, and
we talked for
information.
We talked for a long time today, and he had a lot to say, a lot to share, things that were happening in his personal life and things that were shown to him. He said he's been feeling good.
Good.
Yeah, all good things. And, we talked about a lot of things pertaining to the church, the people who are awake and who are coming to the understanding and that things are changing, and they're changing fast, and what we need to do from here on out to ensure that we're on the right side of things.
Understood.
So the talk we had today could have been a show in itself, but definitely looking forward to that.
Before we get into the show content, I just want to bring something up. Joe and I actually had a kind of a conference earlier today about this, and I think it's important, and I think that the listeners to the show kind of need to understand where we're coming from and where we are, and in general, everyone talks about everyone seems to be on a different page. Do you feel that, Joe? I mean,
understandably, though.
Yeah.
Everybody grows at different rates, and everybody is different as far as their motivation and their willingness to learn and the ability to learn. Sometimes it could take me a year to learn how to do something like tie a shoe, or each individual is different as far as that goes. So
I think it did, actually, being your dad.
Well, when you try to teach me at 1 month. Yeah, it takes a while.
I know. When I say everyone's on different pages, let's get into the larger appearance of things here, the larger agenda of what's going on. And I think that perhaps if we look at what's going on today, I can see why people are on different pages. And folks, I don't know whether you saw this, but today on one of the cable channels, that movie from 1984, Red Dawn, was on. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt. I have not seen the original Red Dawn. I have seen a new Red Dawn, I guess. I think it's called Red Dawn.
Right.
It was on Netflix, I believe. It's about North Korea invading the northwest part of the U.S.
Right. And the original Red Dawn was from 1984, and of course, it was interesting because the part I only caught like 15 minutes, and it seems like when I watch movies, it's always like in 15-minute increments, and I don't get the whole thing. But back during the Cold War, when Russia, there was an invasion of the United States, and from what I gathered, and you cinephiles out there, I'm sure can correct me, but it was kind of a surprise invasion of the United States, and troops came up from Mexico and across Alaska, and I mean there were Russian troops, Cuban troops. It was a mixture of foreign troops. Surprisingly, from what I gather, China was on our side. Europe decided not to get involved in helping the United States, but it was about the invasion in a larger sense. It was about the invasion of the United States. All right. Now there are a lot of people out there that talk about this happening, like a Red Dawn scenario, where we're going to have foreign troops on our soil and United Nations people on our soil. And in fact, there are troops training here and such. And I believe that. I believe that to be the case. Now, here's where the disconnect comes in. Everyone is kind of waiting for it. This is my opinion now. Everyone's kind of looking for this to happen like right away or soon or tomorrow or next month or next week or within the next, I don't know. Everyone wants to know when this is going to happen, or is it already happening? And I think to a large extent we're being prepared for this.
Yes. But people do want, dates. We have guests on cover a whole different range of topics, and one of the most common questions is, well, tell us when.
Right.
And that's something that, we really, and the guests don't know. We don't know when. We know when we talk about the economic condition that the dollar eventually will collapse. Do we know when? No.
Exactly.
It goes like that for most things. And even the coming of the Lord, he said nobody knows. Only the Father in heaven. And
no, we might be able to know the season, but we're certainly not going to know the day or the hour.
Correct.
But just so take that just like what's this ultimate invasion. I think that's kind of a way off. I think we're being prepared for it, and in the conversation that we were involved in, there was another person involved in the conversation. But look at, for example, look at how the first Gulf War played out. Didn't we see a big build-up before we went after Saddam? I mean, it was like 6 months before we went after Saddam. And look at for example, look at look at World War II. Look at how many battles were fought. And each battle was a successive battle to gain new ground. And well, think of it this way. Because with the playoffs, the football playoffs just taking place this past weekend, and I didn't see any of it. But we'll think of it this way: you're a receiver, and you're supposed to catch the football and run it into the end zone, and then of course that's what the play is. Well, think of us as receivers, football receivers, and our job right now is to concentrate on grabbing, catching the football. But yet, a lot of us seem to be thinking about doing the end zone dance and spiking the football, and thinking ahead to the football, the after party after the game is over. We're not thinking in the here and now. We're not thinking in the present. We're thinking in the future. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but we have a lot of ground to cover before we get to that point. Now, I'm not saying that I'm right, or I'm not saying that we shouldn't think about the distant future battles and the future scenarios, but I think that there's a lot of events that have to take place before this happens. I mean, I think a lot must happen before a Red Dawn scenario does occur. I think a lot has got to play out. I think that I think we still have a lot of fight, the American populace. We've got a lot of fight left in us. I think that there are many options left internally to handle our internal affairs. All I'm saying is, I think that a lot of us are being, I don't know, it's not sucked in, but a lot of us are being guided to look at the far-off picture, and that kind of messes up our ability to fight in the here and now, and our ability to understand the here and now. You know what I mean? And Pop and Joe, we're playing a game. We're playing the game right now, and it's not a game. We're playing our positions right now, and we have a tendency sometimes to look too far ahead, and to look at situations where, grab your bullets, grab your guns, grab your long-term food storage, get in the bunker, and you're in the bunker, and not kind of sticking your head out there and checking what the environment is. So you're in the bunker for what, 6 months? You use up all your supplies, and we haven't even entered the battle yet.
At least you get 6 months of peace and quiet.
Well, yeah, that's true. but what good are you doing by positioning yourself too early in the battle? That's what I'm getting at, and I do think that things are happening. Of course, things are happening all around us, but I think that also has to disconnect though with family members, because family members see the here and now, while you're living, others are living in the future. And I was thinking about that too this weekend and with the movie. We're trying to convince friends, family members of the worst case scenario, and we're looking in the future, which is a good thing, but we shouldn't be fighting future battles before we fight the battles that are before us today. And I think that's where a lot of people are losing family members and friends. They're losing the interest, and they're saying, "Oh, look, I don't see it." Well, if you look at the here and now, look at the present, look at what's going on right before us, right in front of us. For example, the beatdown of the metals. Well, that's a fight of itself that has to do with the collapse of the dollar. If you look at what's going on with Benghazi, and I wrote an article today. It's on CanadaFreePress.com and also HomelandSecurityUS.com about the report about what happened in Benghazi. Through accurate information, I believe that we were responsible, at least in part, responsible for buying more time on Benghazi, or buying more time on the war in Syria. And I think that was a gift from God, buying more time. That was, to me, that's a gift, because we could be a year and a half into a regional war, if not a world war, with Syria. But by exposing what happened in Benghazi, I think that the powers that be, the globalists, the Luciferian, whatever you want to call them, had to go for a different plan. And that bought us more time. And thank God that bought us more time. So this is kind of what I'm saying.
You mentioned something about the metals here. I actually came across today a Federal Register notice issued by the Federal Reserve pertaining to metals, and I'm finding it right now here. Federal Reserve System. Physical commodities, proposed rules, and here, let me pull this up here, and I'm going to read through this again, but they're proposed, this is complementary activities, merchant banking activities, and other activities of financial holding companies related to physical commodities, and in this, it talks about how banks, or the physical commodities, pose a threat to the banking some form of the banking system, and I'm going to have to, like I said, read through this again and find it. But I just thought this was very interesting, because we have seen the metals go from low to really high and back down to a little bit lower, and they've stayed here at this one level. And through our having the guerrilla economist on, and other people who are well-versed in economics, they all say there is manipulation going on big time. And we see figures thrown out there such as silver should be $300 an ounce right now. Gold should be $5,000 an ounce right now. So there is a lot going on with the metals, and I think, as your DHS insider said once, you watch the metal prices. There was a real specific set of circumstances he gave that said if the metal prices do this or do that, fluctuate in one way or the other, or you're going to see them drop down and then something will happen. It's important, whether you own metals or not, to pay attention to the price of metals day by day, because that is an indicator of the economy and the health of the dollar.
Exactly. And this came out, too, in King World News. I don't know whether you saw this, the headline, of course, dated yesterday. This is going to be a disaster of historic proportions. Okay, that's the headline. And it gets into... this was written by Robert Fitzwilson of the Portola Group, who explained, put in perspective about how bad the current state of just one aspect of this monumental fiat money debt creation and currency debasement has become. And folks, we're right now we are into this collapse of the dollar, the killing of the dollar. People are expecting to look outside or to go to the store and encounter this Rhodesian Zimbabwe type of experience. Well, that's really at the tail end of things, and that kind of addresses, it goes back to what I was saying in the beginning. This is a process. What we're experiencing is a process. In fact, it's a long process. If you go back with the establishment of the Fed back in 2013, and then, of course, the graduated income tax, and then moving along to the 1971 Nixon move to close the gold window, hasn't this killing, this debasement of the U.S. dollar been a process and not just a one shot to the head or a double tap to the head? Of course, it's been a process. And right now we're in a race to the bottom. We've got countries across the globe debasing their currencies. Everyone with a federal or a central bank is debasing their currencies. They're doing it to obtain or maintain an international trade advantage. And I think that if we look at this in the big picture, I think it becomes clearer. I think it becomes you've got a better ability to see where we're really headed. It's for example, I happened to have a conversation with somebody who was talking about owning and buying silver and gold. It was just a theoretical conversation, and that person says, "Well, I'm glad I never bought silver, I never bought gold, and I wouldn't do it." And I said, "Okay, well, that's why not." Well, look how far it's gone down. Can you imagine buying it at gold at $1,800 an ounce? And it was kind of an interesting conversation because I said, "Well, what about now?" It's at whatever it is. I don't even know what it is. $1,200 an ounce or something like that. Wouldn't it be a great buy?
12.5, I think.
Okay,
yeah.
All right. And he said, "Well, no, I'll keep my money in the bank." I said, "Okay, but you understand that keeping the bank is kind of you're actually a creditor to the bank." Oh, no, I'm not.
Yeah, keeping the money in the bank is basically you're being given an illusion of safety and security with your money. But at the same time, the banks are making money from holding your money there. Not only that, they're risking and leveraging your money for their own personal gain, which in turn they could lose.
And Glenn Beck talked about this last week, I think it was, rehypothecation. Everyone wants to use these big fancy words.
Rehypothecation. I think I've heard that word before.
Oh, sure you have. Hypothecation, rehypothecation. Oh, these are big fancy words that no one can understand. Well, the meaning of that, it's really simple. The bank can loan out your money 5 different, 10 different, right, 15 different, 20 different times, 40 different times, however many times that they want to loan it out.
There's a law that says they can loan up to 10 times. If you put $100 in a bank, they could loan out 1,000 based on your 100, and that was done away with not too long ago.
Well, yeah, you had the lifting of the restrictions of back in the 90s, really, of the Glass-Steagall Act and the restrictions of the Glass-Steagall Act. So, there is this disconnect. So going back to what I said initially, if you think about this, and maybe I'm kind of trying to make this too much of a cerebral argument, but if you think about this, how can you talk with a neighbor, a family member, or a friend about what's happening right now with money, with the encroachment, the tyrannical encroachment, this process of losing our liberties? It's happening.
But do so in a way that it's not too much at once. It's not too, scaring them off, or it has to be done almost. There has to be a finesse to it, in a way.
Well,
you can't just go to your neighbor's house or whoever's house and say,
hey, the Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. Or the Chinese are coming.
The dollar's going to collapse. The dollar's going to collapse. Get all your money out of your bank right now. It has to be. You have to explain it to people in a way that you would want something to be explained to you if you have no understanding of it. Right.
And that's the thing, because how would, and think about this for yourselves, ladies and gentlemen. Think about this. How would you feel if you were on the receiving end of that kind of conversation, where you're attempting to talk rationally to someone, saying, look, we've got some really bad problems here. We're going to see a monetary devaluation. We're going to see the killing off of the dollar as the U.S. reserve currency, but without overstating the case. And at the same time, you cannot have a conversation like that and say, well, the Russians are here and they're going to put you in FEMA camps and cut off your heads. And they're going to shoot you in the head and take you off to these camps. Okay, look, I understand all of this. I understand that this is, in fact, the people who say this, they're not wrong. That's the insidious part of this. They're not wrong. But there's a lot that has to happen between today and that point when everyone is kind of in a Red Dawn scenario, when everyone is fighting on their own soil. Now, it's not really based on time. It's based on events. Because you could have a series of events that would go down in a couple of weeks or a couple of months to get to that point. But think about how long it took to get us to the present. Now, once again, the people who are talking about this, and let me stress this, they're not incorrect. What was that? Did you hear that? Wow. Okay.
What'd you hear?
Well, I heard this. Something happened in my headphones. Yes, no, it wasn't. No voices in my head. Something happened in my headphones here, Joe, that made me believe that I was cut off from the network here. Are we still on the network?
We are connected and connected. Right. Yeah, and it's all green. So.
Okay. Well, anyway, getting back to this, I apologize.
Did you take the medicine for the voices in your head today?
No, I'm letting that jabber on. And that's, seriously, a lot of times people will look at us or look at someone delivering the message, looking at the messenger, because we're all messengers out there. If you're listening to this program, you're a messenger. You're part of delivering that message to your neighbor, your family member, your husband, your wife, your whatever. But you're getting resistance. Well, why are you getting resistance? Because they're going to work, or they're going to the mall, they're going shopping, they're going to take vacations, they're going to visit, they're doing the things that they normally do and have done for the last how many years, and they're still able to do that. So by you saying, you know what, the Russians are coming, or the Russians are here, the Chinese are here, we're going to be fighting in the streets. There's FEMA camps. There's going to be there's going to be neighbor against neighbor, son against father, father against brother, brother against sister, whatever.
Cats against dogs.
Yeah, skunks against squirrels. You're not wrong, but there's a lot that has to happen before that does happen, I believe. And that's where we come into this disconnect, because you're spiking the ball, you're doing the dance before you even catch the ball, you're invading Berlin before you even hit the shores of Normandy. We're seeing in the distance what takes place and trying to warn people, but at what expense are we doing that? At the expense of what's happening today, at the expense of those teeny little things that take place today.
And you're hitting on something, and I don't know if you're intending to go this route, but this pertains to the Bible prophecy, and the Lord's return. In the Bible, it explains that there would be signs of the coming of the Lord again, and it also says that there would be false prophets, false teachers, and it talks about how these false teachers will continue to make false claims. And I know there's been a few people on YouTube who've done great jobs talking about these and explaining this. But what this does is, with people who set dates and say, this is going to happen, the rapture is happening on, what was the last one, May 10th or something like that. And each time somebody does this, and it never comes to pass, takes people who people should never just believe what anybody says in the first place, but the apostasy, the falling away, it makes people look away from these things. Until we read in the Bible where it says that they're going to say, "Where is your God? He has not returned. He's not coming." And that's going to lead to more people being fallen away. And it's like the boy who cried wolf story. You cry wolf so many times, and it's not a wolf. And then when you actually cry wolf and the wolf's there, nobody listens.
Well, interesting you mentioned that. You gave that metaphor, because the conversation we had involved a gentleman that was talking to us, and he said it's kind of like being a kind of a young child. Imagine yourself a young child, and you live 20 miles away from the zoo, and you hear on the news that a gorilla escaped from the zoo. Now, this is the analogy that he used. So you're kind of this young innocent person, or maybe you're not. I mean, it doesn't really matter. And you hear the news. Oh, the gorilla escaped from the zoo, and he's a killer gorilla. Magilla the gorilla. Wait, was Magilla
killer gorilla? Okay.
Was Magilla a good gorilla? I don't know. We'll say a killer gorilla escapes from the zoo. Well, what do you do as a watchman, as somebody who is knowing what's going on out there, knowing that this report that this gorilla escaped from the zoo? What do you do responsibly? Well, of course, you take precautions, but you also have to understand there's a whole lot of real estate. There's a whole lot of houses and businesses and places and parks and things between you and that 20-mile-away zoo. So what makes you think that that gorilla is coming right to your house? Now, I say that only to mean that there's a lot of battles that that will take place. Gorilla can make a beeline right to your house, kind of bypass all the delis on the corner and the 7-Elevens and the Twinkie stand, or the hot dog carts and the Twinkie stands and stuff, of course. But is it going to happen that way? Probably not. Probably that gorilla is probably going to go for the first or most closest, easily accessible place first. So by overhyping and overstating the case to your own family, hey, a gorilla's on the loose. Well, wouldn't it be better perhaps just to point to those, to the incident and say, look, we have to be mindful of this. Now, we also have to be realistic that there's a lot of real estate between that zoo and us. So what we should do is watch, prepare, and certainly don't go into that area unprepared. Meaning you better have a gorilla gun in your arsenal, or a tranquilizer gun, or at least a buddy with one, or at least be able to outrun the person you're with, right? You know what I mean. So all of this is to say that, yeah, this stuff is happening. Yes, there are plans. Yes, there are this one world order architecture is in place. And the other part of this is the very architects of this one world order want you as a messenger, as a listener, as somebody who has the intellectual capacity to understand and to take the message to your friends and family. They want you to believe that this is a done deal, that resistance is futile, or resistance is futile. That's what they want you to believe. But it's not. It is a fait accompli. We know how this is going to end, and this is going to end in our favor. But it's not going to end in our favor without bumps, bruises, bloodied noses, tears, and times of sorrow. It's going to be a fight. But let's make sure we're fighting the current battle. Make sure we're fighting the current battle ahead of us. Let's make sure we're not reading our neighbor's mail, but we're reading our own. And then I say that meaning that we have to read our own instructions. God, I believe God has given each one of us instructions. Are we reading ours? Or are we reading the instructions of the desk, somebody sitting at a desk 3 or 4 desks away from us?
Right. And a good way to put that is, so often and too often we see people listen to other people for scriptural interpretation when we can get the truth through the Lord if we, pray and ask. He will show it to us. But people want to take the easy way out. And another way of looking at it...
Yeah, wait a second. What you're saying is, and I like this because this is important. Instead of reading the Bible, what we do is we watch a YouTube or read a book about someone else's view about what the Bible says.
Exactly. And this is one of the biggest problems within the body of the church who really believes in the Lord. And it's not that they don't want to read the Bible or can't read the Bible. And sometimes people will go watch these videos to see if their understanding is accurate or not. The problem really starts when people use that as though it is Scripture, another person's interpretation. Then that's when we're in murky water. So we all, like you say, read our own mail. How can we know what we're supposed to do, what the Lord wants us to do, if we're too busy learning what He's telling somebody else to do?
Exactly. And we cannot be so encumbered by future battles. Now, this goes for the Scripture as well, but we cannot be so mentally encumbered by what's down the road 5 or 6 miles or 7 or 8 battles ahead. There's this. It's always a very important to keep your head in the current game. Okay, we have to realize what we're fighting. We have to be mindful of what 5 or 6 battles are down the road. We have to strategize for that. We have to prepare for that. And I think mentioning, too, the gold and silver is an issue because we always hear well, there will always be somebody who will bring up the Scripture. Well, gold and silver, they'll throw it in the streets. It's worthless. Well, that's true. At some point in time.
Yeah.
Does that mean it's worthless today? We should throw it? Of course not. And that's a perfect example, I believe.
Right. And not only that, the Scriptures, from what I understand, it's speaking to those people who have thought that their gold and silver would buy their way out of trouble or even buy their way into heaven. Those who put the gold and silver above what the Lord offers. Those who think that the gold and silver can protect them. So that is one of the big things. But, too often, going back to what we say about reading your own mail, people might get something from the Lord that they're supposed to do, and then they try to project it to other people to say, you have to do this yourself. You're not living right if you don't do this way, which is a big problem also.
Well, that's about priorities. That's about keeping yourself spiritually in tune, which we have to do. That's the other part of this, too. The reason, for example, that we speak, that we deliver news, that we analyze news and information, the stuff that's out there through a biblical perspective is how else are you going to survive what's coming if you don't connect the Scripture, biblical prophecy, the Word of God? How else are you going to survive if you don't use that as your gold standard? Forgive the reference, but as a gold standard for your actions? You're not. You're not going to survive what's coming without the spiritual sustenance and without having a good spiritual understanding. And going back to the reference to the gold and silver throwing in the streets, that's going to take place. But what happens, there's a lot that happens before that time. Just as your U.S. dollar, if you're listening to this in the UK, your euro or your pound, or if you're listening to this, whatever country you're listening to this, your fiat currency, when the collapse happens, and it will, trust me, it will, does that mean that what you're holding, that fiat currency, that note, the euro in your hand or the dollar in your hand, does that become immediately worthless? It could. On the other hand, it could lose value rapidly. How rapidly? Well, geez, I don't know. My crystal ball doesn't really work that well. All we have is historical precedent.
Right. And another thing is there are a lot of people out there that say, gold and silver are bad. It's something of this earth. It's against God. It's lots of different opinions on it. But it's the same thing as money. If you have a job, imagine getting paid in gold and silver. Well, it's all the same.
The people that say that, to me, the people that say, look, having gold and silver is bad, are the same people that misrepresent the Scripture about money, saying money is the root of all evil. That's not true.
The love of money.
The love of money
is the root of all evil.
That's correct.
Right.
That's correct.
And by insulating yourself, if you have the ability to own gold or silver, it is just a hedge so you can take care of your family, yourself, and those around you if the paper currency goes away.
Not if, but when.
But just like,
and it's not let me just jump in here, please. It's not if, but when, and it's not an investment. If you are buying gold and silver for an investment or to make money, I should say, then that's totally the wrong, incorrect mindset. But if you're buying it for a preservation of wealth, if you bought it at $1,900 an ounce gold and silver at $50, well, sorry, but you know what? It's a better buy now because we're doing it to preserve our wealth, which is not the same as preserving our currency.
For a second here, let's pretend I buy gold.
Okay.
All right. And I say I bought gold, when it was $1,700 going up to $2,000. And now it's the levels it is at now. If I were to buy gold, it would not be to make money, like you say. It's something that is an asset. It would be similar to buying a car, only if cars didn't lose value, they were driven. It's an asset. I mean, you have many things that can be considered assets, but gold and silver particularly are currency also. They serve several uses. But yeah, if you're in it for to gain money, I mean, you're going to buy gold and silver, and when the prices go up and down or go up, you're going to sell that gold and silver to get back your fake currency. As you said, it's about having the ability to be prepared in case one thing happens, just like food storage.
That's perfect. We urge, you know what, Joe? We urge people, if you've got the means, if you've got money, to me, if you've got money in the bank, and here's where the practical advice comes in, and I know some people are listening to this and saying, oh, get on with it already, but think about this, because there's a lot of people out there that are not at your level, and even if they are, or even if, look, everyone needs a refresher. I believe this to be the case. Everyone needs a kind of a reminder, a little shot in the arm, a little shot of vitamin B, whatever. Look, it's not time to get in your bunkers yet, at least from my point of view, to eat your long-term food storage. It's not time to load up the weapons, lock and load type mentality. Yeah, we're not there yet, but it is time. Let's take let's take advantage of the time that God has given us, and perhaps the time that we have enabled for ourselves for example, by exposing Benghazi and stoving up what could have been taking place in Syria today. That's coming. Believe me, World War III is coming, and Syria is going to play a large role in that. Currency wars are going to play a large role in what's taking place. And in fact, they're really inextricably linked, but that's a larger picture. But see, well, there's like 5 different directions I want to take this, but one of the directions, let's go back to gold and silver for a moment here in food storage. Gold and silver. To me, everyone should be, if you've got the means, start buying silver, just junk silver. Everyone can do this. And let's say you're destitute and you've only got $20 in your pocket or $40. Go to the bank. Now, I understand that a lot of this has been done, and it's getting slim pickings, so to speak. But if you take cash, go to the bank and ask for, I don't know, a roll of quarters or a roll of dimes, and look for pre-1964 dimes and nickels, or dimes and quarters, and once in a while you'll find a gem in there, in the rolls of coins. If you do nothing else, and make it a family project. Get your kids involved if they're old enough. This is how I keep Joe occupied for hours on end. Just kidding. But there are ways to do things. But seriously, I would say now is a good time to invest in silver, invest in gold. And I'm talking about or physical delivery of gold and silver. I'm not talking about buying the paper, because when you have the Fed calling it a barbarous relic, or people calling it barbarous relics and beating the price down, hey, now's the time. And even if it goes down significantly again, it's not really the value of the silver or the value of the gold going down. It's the value of the dollar or the medium in which you are buying it that goes down. And
you may never have the opportunity to use it for anything, but it is there as an insurance. It's just in case things do happen, or when they do happen, and you find yourself in a position to help your family with these, then it's there and you have it. If not, that's fine too. Nobody's saying either way that you should or shouldn't do it. It's just a matter of being prudent and making sure that you're doing what you can for your family and your neighbors. And I always say, with what's happening in this world and the way things are spiraling, into a out of control area, it would be so much easier if people weren't just fighting amongst themselves, if they didn't have to worry about food, and that being done by each person who is storing food and water and supplies to have enough for their neighbors. So people won't have to focus solely on finding food. We'll be able to try to build a community again much faster if those things are left not to worry about.
About that. And I think we should spend a little bit of time talking about that, because there are people out there who do say, and rightly so, having stockpiles of food, of ammo, of anything does make you a target. And you know what? I agree. Oh, boy. I agree that it makes you a target if the people in which you are around, your close circle of friends, of family, or whatever, if they know about it. For example, if you have we'll say, a pantry full of freeze-dried food, and everyone should, and water, and medical supplies, or whatever you've got. You certainly don't want to telegraph that. You certainly don't want to have some electrician or some plumber come in and fix your house and see your supply, or your supply of gold and silver. I mean, it's just common sense. You don't want to do that. On the other hand, if you are in a conversation with a neighbor, and be careful on how you do this, I think it would be prudent, as you point out, to talk with your neighbors, talk with the closest people around you, to see where their head's at, and then, and only then, after some prayerful consideration, talk to them about, well, okay, what do you think about food storage, and enter into that situation wisely, because you don't want to be a target. You don't want to be. Remember the Twilight Zone episodes of the 1960s, 1963, and during the Cold War, when there was one episode where the one family had a bomb shelter, and of course there was some, I don't recall the particulars, but there was some threat. They retreated to the bomb shelter, and they had neighbors pounding on the door and to let them in. And the guy said, "Look, we only made preparations for our family." And the wife, and you could just see the agony of the wife and the family, knowing that they don't open that door, those neighbors, if this was real, would be dead. They're going to die. The people that they were playing cards with and having cocktails with, remember, this is the 60s now, the night before, were going to be toast hours later, but you'd be safe. There's a lot of consideration you've got to make, mental and prayerful consideration. Do you really want to be in that position? Do you really want to find yourself in that position? Ultimately, in that episode, I believe, if I remember correctly, the neighbors had destroyed the door and gained entry, and by that time, everyone realized when the bomb shelter or bunker was breached, everyone realized that it was a false alarm. But imagine living in that neighborhood with those people from that point forward. Do you want to? Is that what you want to do? Is that how you want to live? So we're in that time period where we have the luxury of being able to talk with our friends, our family members. But see, going back to the original point, it's difficult to make your case about the seriousness of our current situation when you're talking about events that are maybe 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or a dozen events down the road, when there's so much real estate between our present and those events, when there's so many events that have to happen before there are guillotines or guillotines, whatever, in coliseums or in stadiums, and people's heads are getting chopped off, and FEMA camps are active, and you've got re-education going on, and you got Russian soldiers and Chinese and UN or green or blue, whatever, patrolling the streets of America. Will that happen? Oh, yeah. But will it happen before a whole lot of other things happen? No. Can we be sure of the time, the sequence of time? No, we can't be sure of the sequence of time. But we do know that it's not going to go from where we are today to what I referenced, the scenario I referenced, without other events taking place in the meantime. The only variable factor here is how long do those other events last? So, and the other thing too is thinking of ourselves and not thinking of our children, our grandchildren. We're storing, for example, gold and silver. Well, why should I do that if it's going to go down? Well, you're thinking too small. You're thinking too short. What about your children? What has happened to our collectiveness or our collective thought about caring for our children and our grandchildren? leaving something that's worth something to them or will be worth something to them? Are we so selfish? I don't mean really to it's not even selfishness. It's a mindset. Are we so stuck on taking care of ourselves that we're not thinking about others? And that's, Joe, you brought that up too, about the neighbors and family and friends, but the children especially, your children, your family, your immediate family. So that's kind of what this is all about. I also just I also have looking at the comments from various forums and from World News where they have this is going to be the disaster of epic or historic proportions. Isn't it interesting to see some of the comments? If you do nothing else, folks, when you go to a forum or go to a story, always invest some time into reading the comments from people.
Yeah.
It's important to do that. A different insight. It gives you a handle on what people are thinking. It tells you too. It gives you a good idea of who's out there that they're trying to create this diversion, this mental diversion, or this trying to steer the conversation away from what's really important. It's assailing the messenger and not the message. And lastly, Joe, and you were part of this conversation too. You think about Edward Snowden, for example. How many people out there are really dissing Edward Snowden, his message, because he is talking or because he is in Russia and RT is publishing what he's saying? Does without respect, without getting into anything else, let's just look at the very simple part of this. Without dealing with Edward Snowden directly, just think of Edward Snowden as a messenger. Does his venue negate the message? Is the message correct? I guess that's the question. Is the message of Edward Snowden correct? For example, if came out and said, I don't know, made a correct statement about something, are you going to disregard that correct statement because it was made by Vladimir Putin? Well, maybe there's an agenda behind his statement, but is the message correct? Is the information correct? And a lot of times people will throw out the message with the messenger. And I think it's important that we focus on there is that noise again. You didn't hear that?
I'm not hearing any noise except what's coming out of your mouth.
All right. No, actually, I'm getting tones, like telephone tones in my ear. Okay. Well, okay. You know what? I do see something here on my screen that's not coming up on the studio screen. So pardon the intrusion, folks. But at any rate, let's focus on the message, not the messenger necessarily. Yes, take it under advisement. Look at the messenger and take that under advisement. But let's look at what the message is. And I think that we should do that in all of the situations. So those beating the drums, and there are some great people beating the drums about what's going to happen. And just because it hasn't happened yet, or we're not seeing the signs of it, don't assail the messenger.
No, and be thankful that it hasn't happened yet. A lot of what's been talked about.
Exactly. And I think this is an important discussion to have. I really do. Because there are a lot of people, and I see this, there are a lot of people that are in this struggle with their family, with their friends, and saying, look, this is coming down the road. And indeed it is. But rather than trying to sell them on the entire enchilada, let's go for the appetizer first, the here and now. Let's take a different approach here. And say, okay, fine. You might, I came to you last week or 2 weeks ago or a month ago and told you, yeah, man, there are Russian troops here, or this is going to be the end result. And they couldn't handle it. Well, let's go back and say, okay, wait a minute. Remember that discussion we had? How about this? Let's look at for example, take something like the currency situation from King World News. And I just picked this out because I've talked about it. What about this? Well, this leads to the fact that there will be a debasement of our currency, and yes, the dollar is killing the dollar as our world reserve currency. What will happen after that? Well, we're going to lose our military might, and then walk them through that series of, or you can walk them through that series of events, but instead of hitting them straight between the eyes with that end result first. Baby steps. Not to overstate our case. And by the way, lastly, and I'll close with this because I know we're getting close to the top of the hour, so I'm monopolized the entire hour. Folks, if you go to HomelandSecurityUS.com or CanadaFreePress.com, or both, ideally, CanadaFreePress.com, you can discuss the article. But if you go to, the article is about death race to Damascus continues. Last week, and we did not mention this before, last week the Senate Intelligence Committee came out with their report. And Chris Matthews had some sort of statement about that as well, saying that the right wing...
Got the audio.
Okay. Yeah. As we close this hour, we'll play the Matthews audio clip where the right has to apologize to Susan Rice for... it's incredible. But there's more to this. You can read the article yourself. There is a link in the sources to the actual report by the Senate Intelligence Committee. But you know what the problem is here? Not one person has addressed the larger issue as to what the operation was with respect to Benghazi. What were we doing over there? And we've said many, many times that this was a weapons smuggling operation. But you know the other half of that, and I'm preparing an article, a report for tomorrow. The other half of that, it was not only weapons. It was terrorists, fighters. We weren't just involved in the logistics of, right. This is not just about weapons. This is about inserting fighters into Syria to topple Assad. Where were they being trained? Who was training them? We were. And, that video, that's a whole nother nugget of information. Why did that video suddenly drop off? Well, unless you're Chris Matthews. Who created that video? Some nobody, and it just happened to appear at that very moment in time when no one else heard about it to cause this angry protest of a CIA compound that, unless you were in the know, you didn't know it was a CIA compound? I don't think so. Where'd that come from? Yeah, the intelligence agencies. So let's hear from Chris Matthews as we go into the top of the hour to hear what he's got to say about the Senate Intelligence Report.
Let me finish tonight with this. I'm impressed by that bipartisan report of the Senate Intelligence Committee. It must have been particularly good and gratifying news for National Security Advisor Susan Rice. Let me nail the points. Point one, what Rice said on Meet the Press about the attack on the Benghazi facility was true. It was a spontaneous, opportunistic attack that had been triggered by a similar earlier attack in Cairo that day, an attack that was triggered, they suspect, by that anti-Islamic movie made by some character out in California. Two, the failure to use the word terrorist was a decision of the CIA, who wrote the talking points, the ones Rice used on Meet the Press. The CIA, including its director, General David Petraeus at the time, uses the word extremist, not terrorist, to mean part of a terrorist organization. It was his and the agency's word choice, not Rice's. Third, the failure to mention al-Qaeda on Meet the Press tracked the talking points handed Ambassador Rice by the CIA. She did what the CIA told her to say. She didn't mention al-Qaeda because they made a point to take it out of the talking points. They, at the agency, made that decision. So somebody out there on the right tonight owes Miss Rice an apology. Don't you think? Don't you think? That's hardball for now. Thanks for being with us. All In with Chris Hayes starts right now.
Don't you think somebody owes Susan Rice an apology? My goodness. I hope nobody takes that seriously. I mean, how they get away with this, and it's not Chris Matthews. He's only as smart as the people who write his news for the day. But, man, the disconnect, the lies, the deceit, the deception, and the misleading that continues. is just going to continue. It's going to get worse, and we're going to see more and more of this. And most of it is disinformation trying to take off the important parts of what there is important parts, the kernels or nuggets of truth that are out there in the news. But this is just par for the course for MSNBC and the mainstream news media. Folks, for listening, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report this Monday, January 20th, 2014. We're going to be taking your calls halfway through this hour and into the rest of the show at 661-244-9839. The first half hour of this second hour is going to be news that we're going to get into, and we do have a few important pieces of news and some interesting news here. I'm going to start with some remarks made by Governor Cuomo, Governor of New York, and he said some pretty extreme things. Yeah, I would say extreme. Pretty extreme things about extremists. I'm going to play a quick clip here and listen to what he says.
You have a schism within the Republican Party. You have the Republican Party is searching for an identity. They're searching to define their soul. That's what's going on. Is the Republican Party in this state a moderate party, or is it an extreme conservative party? That's what they're trying to figure out. And it's very interesting because it's a mirror of what is going on in Washington, right? The gridlock in Washington is less about Democrats and Republicans. It's more about extreme Republicans versus moderate Republicans. Mm-hmm. And the moderate Republicans in Washington can't figure out how to deal with the extreme Republicans, and the moderate Republicans are afraid of the extreme conservative Republicans in Washington, in my opinion. You're seeing that play out in New York. The SAFE Act, the Republican Party candidates are running against the SAFE Act. It was voted for by moderate Republicans who run the Senate. Their problem is not me and the Democrats. Their problem is themselves. Who are they? Are they these extreme conservatives who are right to life, pro-assault weapon, anti-gay? Is that who they are? Because if that's who they are, and if they are the extreme conservatives, they have no place in the state of New York. Because that's not who New Yorkers are. If they're moderate Republicans, like in the Senate right now, who control the Senate, mm-hmm. moderate Republicans have a place in the state. George Pataki was governor of the state as a moderate Republican, but not what you're hearing from them on the far right.
Okay. I know that was a lot to digest, but Cuomo is saying that if you believe in life or don't believe in abortion, if you do not believe in homosexual marriage, and if you believe in the Second Amendment, you are not welcome in his state. In his state! I forgot it was his. But this was said during a radio interview where Cuomo pointed out that Republicans were in the midst of a schism and conservatives were working against moderate Republicans. And a little bit of the text here says, their problem is not me and the Democrats. Their problem is themselves. He said, who are they? They are the extreme conservatives who are right to life, pro-assault weapon, anti-gay. Is that who they are? Because if that is who they are, then they're extreme conservatives, and they have no place in the state of New York because that's not who New Yorkers are. Very interesting comments coming from the governor of New York, basically going against all American values and laws and traditions and principles, and just coming out and saying, if you don't believe the way I want you to believe in our president and the agenda that's being pushed onto you, well, then you don't belong here. Now, how long until God is injected into this, where somebody will be quoted as saying, well, if you believe in God, you don't belong in this state or this country. And then from there, if you do believe in God and you're still here, we're going to take care of that problem. Is that something that people see happening in the near future? Because I definitely do. We're told it's going to happen. How much attack, or how many attacks, how many subliminal and overt references to people's beliefs who don't line up with popular mainstream beliefs, like abortion, baby killing. How many people believe in the Second Amendment are now being marginalized because of what they believe? I don't remember a time in history, other than maybe since 9/11, where people were so anti-freedom, so anti-constitution, that it became popular. How can a free people who enjoy freedom, obviously, I don't know one person who would vote for being hauled away onto a 12-hour-a-day work line against their will. When in history has this ever happened where a free people are either so dumbed down, misinformed, or wrapped in their self-absorbed that they are against freedom that their fathers, their grandfathers, great-grandfathers have fought to protect and preserve for their children who they have? What's their future for people who are against, who think like Cuomo? It's just mind-boggling to see a governor say these things. And to rephrase what he said, Governor Cuomo says, you don't belong in New York if you don't believe in the practice of killing babies, if you don't believe in people who are gay being together in marriage, and if you like weapons, you are not welcome there. That's pretty extreme. That's more extreme. If you are pro-choice, I'm not going to hate you for your belief in being pro-choice. I'm not going to agree with you, but I'm not going to tell you don't belong here. I think Cuomo is the one that needs to go. And he should take all the people that believe the same way as he does with him. If it's going to come down to forcing people or telling people they don't belong because of what they believe, well, if you're so vehement about your beliefs and the way other people should believe, and so feel so strongly that there needs to be a separation from one or the other, pro-life to pro-abortion, they can't coexist together. Well, then why don't you gather up all your pro-abortion friends and go find another place to live? Because the foundation of this country was built on life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and freedom. You're trying to change it into something you want it to be, and that's not going to work. You go find a new place, because this place is not going to change and not going to get rid of the people and ideas that want to turn this into even further. Can you imagine the saints in heaven, the angels in heaven, and God, and looking down on the humans today? In all the blessings and all the things that we've been given as a country, the freedoms, when you think about the world population, how many people in the world wake up to hunger, not knowing if they're going to eat, not having shoes, disease-ridden? And here we are in America, whether, it doesn't matter that we're going through economic problems and wars, we are comfortably living well above and beyond most all nations. And not only are we not grateful for it, we have people who are trying to change it into a starvation, death culture, baby murdering, tyrannical nation. And then you have people who are applauding the efforts to do so.
You make a good point, Joe. Look at how we got here. The phrase, the marketing, lying marketers. They sold America. They sold Americans on abortion, plain and simple. The phrase, women must have control over their own bodies. Safe and legal abortion is every woman's right. This is what Cuomo is pushing. Who decides? You decide. Abortion. It's a personal decision between a woman and her doctor. Now, what I want to just address here very quickly is the brainwashing, the social engineering behind this. And freedom of choice, a basic American right. This is what we're talking about. This is what Cuomo seems to be pushing. My body, my choice. This is one of the most successful marketing campaigns in modern political history, the abortion rights movement, with all of its emotionally compelling catchphrases. I'm going to tell you right now, the powerful political slogans, they've succeeded in turning what once was a crime into a fiercely defended constitutional right, and there is no such constitutional right.
And I don't know if this is where you were going, but for somebody who promotes freedom of choice so much, it's not really freedom of choice, is it?
Not at all.
Freedom to choose to agree with them.
It's not pro-choice. It's pro-abortion, pro-death.
Right.
But look at the success, the rapid total success that resulted in abortion being legalized in all of the states for virtually any reason throughout all 9 months of pregnancy. We talked last week a little bit about what happened since Roe v. Wade in '73, how many abortions there were, tens of millions. But although there are polls that consistently show that Americans disapprove of unfettered abortion on demand, and they resoundingly disapprove by a 3-1 margin, I want to draw your attention to this well-crafted, this magical marketing blitz of slogans that appeal to Americans' deeply rooted inclination towards tolerance, towards privacy, towards individual rights. Well, they've provided the abortion camp a very powerful rhetorical arsenal with which to fight off efforts to reverse that very significant legislation, Roe, and which struck down all state laws outlawing abortion. In marketing, and this is we're victims of this marketing war. The party that frames the terms of the debate almost always wins. Isn't that true? Those people from debating class, you should know this. The early abortion marketers, they succeeded in doing exactly that, diverting attention from the core issues of exactly what abortion does to both the unborn child and the mother. And they focus the debate instead on this newly created issue, and that is of choice. No longer was the morality of killing an unborn at issue, but it's rather who decides. Who decides? Do you notice how that argument has moved? The original abortion rights slogans from back in the 70s, folks, you remember these? They remain the virtual articles of faith and rallying cries of today's pro-choice movement, the freedom of choice, and women must have control over their own bodies. Remember some of the groups back in the early days of abortion rights, back in the early 70s. There was a doctor who had gone on record. His name was Bernard Nathanson, co-founder of the pro-abortion group NARAL. He spoke about laughing when he and his cohorts made up these various marketing slogans. This back in the early 60s and 70s. Now, besides having served as chairman of the executive committee of NARAL, the National Association for the Repeal of Abortion Laws, that, by the way, was later renamed the National Abortion and Reproductive Rights Action League. He was one of the principal architects and strategists of the abortion movement in the United States. His story, folks, if you have a chance, and this perhaps is a homework assignment, read the story of Bernard Nathanson, Nathanson. NARAL is the organization. But think about how this argument has changed. Now, think about how far we've gone with a governor, with an elected leader who are saying, if you believe in the rights of the unborn, you're not welcome here in New York State. Oh, my word. And just definitely look into Nathanson, his story. I think you'll find it very intriguing and very, very educational. The Silent Scream, I believe. There was a movie in 1987 where Nathanson had released a film called Eclipse of Reason. And I think it was subtitled, or another film called The Silent Scream. But it's interesting how we can take a look at the deception that was peddled to us and the deception that continues to be peddled by these people. See, Cuomo does not want you to have freedom, despite what he's talking about. And this is, look at Cuomo. The reason Joe played this is because what Cuomo is doing is fast-tracking the very architecture of what other elected officials and appointed officials are doing all across the country. If you look at Cuomo, who's pretty high profile, you can see the playbook of everyone else on the progressive side of things, on the very far left, on the socialist Luciferian agenda. You can see exactly what is taking place. That is kind of that's really the heart of the matter. You're seeing, you're actually witnessing or getting a good view of the playbook that is in use by all of the progressives. And if you don't think that abortion is particularly important to the news of the day, if you're thinking, well, why talk about abortion when there's other more important things to talk about? It is, at the very least, we're talking about the killing of humans, but we're also talking about a strategy. If you understand the strategy of those who are pushing abortion, then you're going to understand their strategy when they're pushing anti-gun legislation, when they're pushing gun registrations, when they're pushing curtailing you on First Amendment rights, and when your rights are being eroded, or when they're pushing the stronger police state tyranny. You see, this will allow you to see the architecture and the marketing, the absolute satanic marketing, but slick marketing for all of this. That's what we're seeing. So that was a good, very good soundbite.
Well, I got another one here for you from Judge Napolitano, President Obama's power grab, and it's 3.5 minutes. Here it is.
Straight ahead, the president insisting he'll fix Obamacare, but does he even have the power to delay or change the law? Judge Napolitano here, weigh in next. Good morning, Judge. We're going to weigh you.
Hey, glad you're up. Hey, the president insists he wants Obamacare fixed, but does he even have the legal authority to tailor the enforcement of the law once it has already been signed? Here to explain is Fox News senior judicial analyst Andrew Napolitano. Judge, he's already done this. He's already messed with his own law to this point. What's going to stop him from doing it any further?
I can't think of a president in your lifetime or mine who has taken the law into his own hands more than President Obama and decided what to enforce and what not to enforce, rather than to do what his oath says, faithfully execute the job, meaning faithfully enforce the laws, meaning enforce the laws as Congress has written them, not as he wishes they would be. He's given exemptions to Obamacare to certain groups that are his friends. Now other people, common folk that can't log onto the system, they proposed this bill and enacted to save 30 million people who are uninsured. They expected 500,000 to log on. They had fewer than 50,000. Can the president give them more time? No, he doesn't have the authority to do so.
So even Republicans or Democrats, if they say, Mr. President, I'm giving you more time, they don't have the authority to give the president that?
No, they do have the authority. If Congress votes to extend these deadlines, that will really put the president to the test. Will he veto such a vote, or will he understand that because the system stinks, people need more time to log on? Can he do it on his own? No. But has that stopped him in the past? No. He's broken the law, changed the law, reinterpreted the law on his own countless times.
Let's take a look. Here's 3 times. Here's a few times that stand out. You got climate change. he's already enacted some legislation there.
He has unleashed the EPA on us to have the EPA, the Environmental Protection Administration, write laws that Congress refused to write.
The Mini Dream Act. We know what he said to illegals that were here.
He basically said, if you have a high school education and you haven't committed a crime, I'm not going to deport you, even though the statute says he's supposed to prosecute them for being here.
And some degree of gun control he's also put his stamp on.
Well, he's having the Department of Homeland Security drive up the price of ammunition. They can't control guns, but if they can make ammunition too expensive for people to have, they can prevent people from the ability to buy and use ammunition.
And that explains why it's being bought up all over the place by the government.
Yes.
The internet regulation and fracking, he's also inserted himself.
This is a president who believes that he can rule by he can rule, that's the word, and he can do so by fiat.
And this is why this segment's so important, because he's losing his popularity by the day. Democrats are deserting him naturally because he's a lame duck, and now because of his popularity and this horrible rollout of Obamacare. The only way for him to get things done is to do executive orders.
Particularly Democrats that have to run for re-election in 2014, like the 15 senators that tried to meet with him in secret until Ed Henry and our colleagues in the White House press room found out about it. Those people will begin to desert him in droves, and he will start to do more and more of it.
And the executive order is going to come cascading down.
Yes.
Unless Congress stops him.
Unless Congress stops him. Brian, what a great book party last night.
Yeah, thanks for coming,
Where
Judge.
is that picture of me kissing you?
I believe it's somewhere on the internet right now. We will show it later.
All right.
Let's take those one at a time, Joe.
Okay.
Because I think that's important. The ammunition. Let's talk about the ammunition first of all. That's probably the least complicated of all. We know that the lead smelting plant was closed because of regulations. Am I correct in that the last lead smelting plant in America was closed?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So now what are we faced with? We're faced with the inability to purchase, or at least to purchase American-made ammunition down the road. Ultimately, we're going to run out of the supply of American-made ammunition, that is to say, with the lead from the American smelting plant. So, now, and I don't know how many people have recall that, but in fact, that's what Obama has caused, or the Obama administration has caused or regime, I should say, has caused to have happen. So where do we stand now? Where do we stand here? I would say that I would say looking at this from a practical standpoint, if you've got a 38, if you've got a 380, if you've got a 44, whatever you've got, I would start purchasing ammunition, because at the very least it's going to go up in price, and at the very most it's going to become hard to get, if you can get them at all. It's kind of like light bulbs, the incandescent light bulbs. Now, American Survival Wholesale has got them. Excuse me, but with respect to ammunition, light bulbs, whatever the case might be, get them while you can, because there will come a time when you're not going to be able to get them. And I think the judge was right. You can't control effectively at the moment. You cannot control the guns fast enough. So how are you going to, what's backdoor gun control? It's turning them into baseball bats because you're out of ammunition. And I do see this still. I mean, how many people have gone to Walmart recently, gone to their ammunition, cage or whatever that thing is, display case, and seen it pretty well empty? And it is. It's carrying through. So we need to take a look at the ammunition aspect of things. And is this backdoor gun control? I do believe it is. That along with the registration requirements. But yet we see photographs of people, for example. Where was that photograph that went viral? Was that Connecticut or somewhere in New England? I don't recall. Where the guys were waiting in line and they were complaining.
I don't remember where that is. I do know what you're talking about, though.
But it was Connecticut or somewhere in New England where they're saying, well, this is unconstitutional. You're waiting in line. Folks, in my view, and this is just me, and I'm certainly not advising people to break the law. I'm just advising people to consider in their own, prayerfully consider what you would do if required to, for example, register or turn in some sort of magazine that's over capacity. Are you going to do that? when in fact it's an unconstitutional. There's nothing in the Constitution that would require you to do that. It would be a codified state law, arbitrary at best. Personally, I'll tell you right now, I don't think I could comply with something like that if I was forced to, and if I had whatever it was being criminalized or whatever it was called. I don't, but would I do it? If I did, probably not. That's just me. So that's on the ammunition side. So that's a very good part. Now he got into the Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act. I'm kind of in the same line there as well. Would I, and I'll say this publicly, I will never me personally, after having prayerfully considered this, I will never enroll in Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act.
Are you saying you are refusing to accept?
Yes.
Well, you're breaking an FDA law now.
An FDA?
That's what it will be. Soon, yes. The Obamacare, many people have talked about this, the microchip, the medical device that will be used for public health safety. I'm looking right now at a administrative form, and on here it says it goes through criteria for. We'll make this real short. The FDA has setting up these regulators that are going to be ensuring that there are devices are being used, and there are options here. I just started reading this one document that I'm referring to now, but it says here, if the answer is refused to accept, there will be a decision, and there's further criteria. If you're filling out the tax form and it says, if the answer to this is no, go to Section C. Well, that's how this is here. And they go through a whole long list of different enforcement actions for all these different, non-reporting of certain things to, we talked, this is ID. It's going to have your health information in it. It's going to have your economic information in this chip. And we're really getting close to the point where this will be attempted to be implemented. And by doing the countless hours of research and reading these mind-numbing documents, they're going to move to do this soon. They're just waiting for the right catastrophe, the right type of disorder or calamity. And I found a book and ordered it and got it earlier on Friday, I think. And it's called International Community, A Goal for a New World Order. And it's written in 1992. And in here it talks about some of the things that we talk about quite often. How they need to create this new world order, an international community. And during the last break, I printed out for you from the U.S. State Department, the United States' the U.S. Declaration to the UN. And it goes on to summarize how the U.S.'s participation in the United Nations was solidified in the United Nations Participation Act of 1945. And it talks about how they will continue to integrate. And basically, the UN will be the base of the world government. And we know that that's true as it has come to fruition, and we see pushing towards that constantly. When I told you guys this a couple weeks ago, the U.S. State Department website, you can't really find the Constitution on there, but you can find the UN Charter in a few places. We're seeing this internationalism subtly and overtly.
Well, I'm glad you brought the word internationalism up because, can I interject something here? All right, I did some research this weekend, and you mentioned Obamacare, the Affordable Health Care Act, and internationalism, this globalist type of leaning, this bent, this posturing. Folks, here's what's taking place right now, today, right in the here and now. The Obama administration is set to sign a contract replacing CGI federal. Remember, the healthcare.gov website was created by CGI federal. Remember when there was this big, this big uproar over Tony Towns Whitley, the senior executive of CGI Federal. She was a college classmate of Michelle Obama at Princeton. She visited the White House complex on several occasions in the run-up to CGI's Federal's being awarded this no-bid contract. Remember that? $678 million no-bid contract. Well, guess what? In keeping with this international leaning, I found that CGI Federal is now being replaced with Accenture. Now, look at Accenture. Who is Accenture? This is extremely important, I believe. You see the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services. That's who is behind awarding these contracts for the healthcare.gov website. Accenture has been selected to become the lead contractor for healthcare.gov. Now, if the research I've done into CGI's replacement found some very interesting information about just who is rescuing this exchange, because that was on the talk shows, which you were talking about. It was on the talk shows on Sunday. But you should be less relieved by this because, you see, as I wrote about, I think it was Friday or last week, Accenture was previously known as Anderson Consulting. Now, that was a corporate outgrowth of the Chicago-based accounting firm, Arthur Anderson. And I think I wrote that if that name rings a bell, it should, because Arthur Anderson was the auditing company for Enron. And I received a couple of emails, one from a partner of Arthur Anderson saying, you got it all wrong. There was a divorce, corporate divorce, and Arthur Anderson had no role in Enron. I mean, the split it took place before Enron. Well, be that as it may, there is a sharing of personnel, a sharing of leadership, a sharing of corporate key men and women, key men being a corporate term. And if you look at what's taking place, Accenture, which is now going to be taking over CGI, their corporate headquarters is located in Dublin, Ireland. Wow, you can't get much more, I don't know, globalist than that, I suppose. So we're outsourcing healthcare.gov to a firm that's incorporated in Dublin, Ireland. But it gets better because their operational headquarters is, guess where? It's in Chicago. It's located inside the Chicago Title and Trust Building. That's located at 161 North Street in Chicago, Illinois. Okay? Now, what I did was I searched for, what else is that 161 Clark Street in Chicago? I'm trying to find out. Well, it's interesting because if we look at who else is there, and I'm trying to find my notes here on this. Oh, here it is. Brian Cave, LLP, is located in that same office building. Well, guess who is a key person at Brian Cave, LLP? This is a global law firm, or a law firm with offices all across the globe. I think there's over 1,100 attorneys associated with this firm. It's a huge firm. They've got like 30 offices in North America and some international. But of counsel of Brian Cave, LLP, located in the same building with Accenture, their operational headquarters, is, again, Brian Cave, LLP. Their of counsel is Jeffrey G. Berman. Well, who's Jeffrey Berman? Jeffrey Berman served successfully as the National Delegate Director for the Obama presidential campaign. Berman led the historic charge to assemble the 2008 delegate majority to nominate Obama for president. He's great friends with David Plouffe. Berman's been referred to as the unsung hero of Obama's primary victory over Clinton. Chicago politics at its finest. Mr. Berman supervised development of the rules and procedure for the National Convention and negotiated the presidential nominating procedures that guarantee the unified convention vote for Obama. Oh, and guess what else that this law firm handles? They're the source of lobbyists acting as hired guns for Trans-Canada and the Keystone XL pipeline. They've got direct ties to the Obama camp, as well as Hillary Clinton, whose State Department has been, or was, I should say, tasked to make the final decision on the Keystone pipeline. But now you might think, well, wait, that didn't work out too well. Follow the money. That's all I've got to say. Follow the money. The past influence is there, but I'm kind of going in the weeds with this because now Accenture, of course, I'm just saying that they're neighbors, the Accenture, the operational headquarters of Accenture, which is taking over for CGI, and Ryan Cave, they're neighbors. Is that an accident? Go back in history. Look at Guy Bannister in the JFK assassination fame, of this JFK assassination fame. Who was he? Who else was in the building with Guy Bannister? And you can look at Nixon when he was a lawyer. Who else was in Nixon's building when he was a lawyer? Does this mean anything? Well, you decide. Look at the two instances I gave you from a historical perspective. So we have Accenture. Oh, and by the way, do you know that Accenture spent a long time making sure that their title, that their name was not offensive in any language whatsoever to anybody. So they tried 60 languages to make sure that the word Accenture did not translate into something that would offend somebody. Incredible. And they've got this greater than symbol over the T in their name, which signifies this forward movement. Yes, this greater than sign above the letter T in their corporate logo in a truly global fashion. As I mentioned, Accenture not only tested their proposed name before the change, they tested it in 60 languages to make sure it didn't have an offensive meaning anywhere, but they also had made sure to put in their corporate compendium their global initiatives with emphasis on sustainability and other key globalist terminology. So, Joe, when you say there's this internationalist aspect of the Affordable Care Act, there it is. So you're replacing CGI federal with Accenture, who's going to handle the healthcare.gov website. That's if no one says, hey, wait a minute, don't do that.
Yeah, and with the RFID aspect of the Affordable Health Care Act, this was already in the law before Obama even took office, this RFID tag and usage. And in it here, it talks about this being here is this document I have from the Government Accountability Office on key considerations related to the federal implementation of radio frequency identification technology, where it talks about the use of these RFID tags. It raises important security concerns, such as where are these tags going to be placed, what databases will use them, and how will they be protected. It says key privacy concerns include notifying individuals of the existence of the technology, tracking an individual's movements, profiling an individual's habits, tastes, and predictions, and allowing for secondary uses of the information. Tools and the practices can help mitigate considerations, including exiting requirements contained in legislation and proposed measures such as deactivation mechanism on the tag, amongst other things. But it goes into how this is going to be used, the RFID technology, to electronically identify, track, and store information in a tag, and the RFID reader scans the tag and sends information to a database. And we see this roll out with the facial recognition software, with the expansions in technology and invasiveness of privacy with the government agencies. And the reason I keep bringing this up, and I know people are wondering, well, why isn't this in the news? Why isn't this being more reported on? My guess is because there's so much information out there, it's so hard to understand that it hasn't been put together too well. Pastor Langford came on in November of 2013 and talked about this and what this means, and he did a very good job, explaining the key aspects of what this means for Americans here. And the whole point of bringing this up now is, you talked about it's not here yet. We're not. How do you talk to your neighbors? How do you talk to your family and friends about what's happening without scaring them off or without sounding like a crazy person? This is one of the hurdles we're going to have to face when dealing with these RFID chips. I know a lot of people out there have family who've probably already expressed the fact that they think it's a good idea for these things to be implemented. Oh, but you'll never lose a child again. Or, the excuses are endless. But we have only one and need only one reason not to comply with this, and that is the warnings from the Lord. And what he said that, what Revelation says, everybody will have a mark, rich, poor, small, great, free or slave, in their right hand or their forehead. And if you do not have the mark, you will not be able to buy or sell. And if you have the mark, you have just given up your eternal place in heaven if you have one. So but we can't be fooled into taking the mark. In other words, no, they can't come to your house when you're sleeping and get you. Or they can't say, people are going to beg for it. Right. And I think that's important for people to understand, because we're not going to be. You're going to have to make a conscious decision to accept the mark of the beast, and you cannot be fooled into getting it. And I watched part of that Aaron Russo documentary he did. Oh, the name escapes me right now. Freedom to Fascism, where he interviews a former head of the IRS. And they get into the language of the IRS law, voluntary compliance, as it states. And the IRS guy says, no, well, imagine you're at a red light at 2 a.m. Do you stop? That's voluntary compliance. And Aaron Russo says, well, no, there's a law that says, it's traffic laws. You cannot go through your red light. And anyway, they ended the interview. And further, he talked about the use of the language and the deception and how they ensnare people in this system through, even though there's no law saying you have to pay an income tax, and they don't define income in the Internal Revenue Code, they prosecute people by the thousands each year. People are in jail for not paying taxes or tax evasion when there is really no law at all. And this RFID thing is going to be the same. It's going to be introduced as a benefit for the public. It is going to be promoted as a safety measure for children. And this speaks directly, adults. Yes, this speaks directly into what Chris Duckett from ZDNet had wrote. I believe it was yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday. Computing targets, new frontier of cars, homes, and everything. And I'll just kind of paraphrase what he said. Basically, for the last couple of decades, the computer industry has promised, or in his words, threatened, that it is coming to take over your living room, and along with it, the remainder of anyone's non-electronic life. And think about that. Despite what the movies and science fiction have promised us, there is undoubtedly a very distinct lack of, well, do we see flying cars? We don't. Cold fusion, consumer jet packs, rocket packs? No, of course not. But it appears, in the words of Chris Duckett, that a ubiquitous computing reality will arrive shortly, and of course it will. This change was not heralded, of course, under the banner of data gathering machines. It was called just a much more pleasant thing. It was called an Internet of Things. Just take one look at Intel's new Edison chip. Now, this Edison chip, the silicon intended to power this revolution, and its prime advertised use case involving the monitoring of your body temperature, your breathing, or even the motion of babies. Let's say you've got a child. It's tugging at the heartstrings and every parentally inclined part of your body. This goes unmentioned. We see this willingness to
Well, if it's for the good, if it's for your good, if it's for monitoring things like your body temperature, breathing, even to keep your child in the crib safe, it's okay. But when Google, for example, makes a $3.2 billion foray into the Internet of Things, purchases a Nest, a company that specializes in smart smoke alarms and thermostats, it's something totally different. Now people call it this impingement of privacy, or impinging the privacy of every online user. Now, look at the disparity between the two. You're looking at this acceptance to make your life easier, as you said, Joe. You know, if it serves the good and it makes things more convenient for you, it's okay. But there's the same technology, for example, in smartphones, smart alarms, smart this and smart that. Well, now it's kind of an invasion of privacy. It's an impingement upon your privacy. This is how they are going to convince us, I believe, that everything is fine. How is it that a piece of Wi-Fi connected baby monitoring hardware we give that kind of a free pass, but the smart meters, no, that's a tool of mass surveillance. This is the argument that Chris Duckett of ZDNet brings about. Are we looking at this rationally? Are we looking at this the way we should?
Should we look at it rationally?
Well, that's a good point. That's a very good point. There's a cynical skepticism out there that seems to be reserved for smart items. Yet it's okay if it's for things like the betterment of your health, or if you can, or for your convenience. It's really an odd kind of a very odd argument that we're looking at, and I think that people are falling for this, Joe. I really do. So, but we have to watch this because you point out where this is in the healthcare, Affordable Health Care Act.
Yeah, and it is, and even people. It's not just about the RFID chip; it's the whole beast system that we live in, and we do live in an antichrist system. Even today, it might not seem like it, and to others, it's plain as day, much more so than even I can imagine. But as we continue to learn and grow with the Lord, it will be revealed to us as we need to know, and we'll be shown these things. What is part of this world, but we need to, because the Lord says, come out of Babylon, come out of this beast system. He calls us to come out of this beast system and trust in Him. When we think about leaving the system that we're in now, well, how will we live? How will we function? That's something each and every one of us does, is ask those questions. And at the same time, I'm sure the Lord understands in the initial stages, but that's lacking trust in Him by asking those questions. And it's something that we need to pray about and contemplate a lot, because as much good as we can try to do in this world, if we're not obeying, what the Lord's will is for us, is it really even good, what we're doing?
Well, again, from a scriptural point of view, that's very succinct and very on target. By the way, we're talking about technology advances here. Did you see this, where the Secret Minority Report technology is scheduled to be put into all post-2010 iPhones? So if you've got an iPhone, for example, that was put into service after 2010, that was now 4 years ago, the technology called iBeacon will track your location. Apple announced recently that they have been secretly installing this iBeacon technology into iPhones since 2010, and it's also tailored to provide advertisements to you. For example, let's say you use your iPhone, and folks, you see this now. You use your computer. Just do this as a test. Open a browser and type in something like, I don't know, search for storage, basement storage cabinets or something, or bookcases, or just something. Notice how the ads on Facebook, for example, are tailored to you. If you type in, let's say you're looking for a ceiling fan, I don't know, I can guarantee you, if you're looking to buy a ceiling fan, that's kind of an odd item, or it's difficult to really. It's not something that you'll see ads for. Just type in ceiling fan and do a couple of searches for ceiling fans, and then log onto your Facebook account and see what ads pop up. And I'll bet you ceiling fans are in there. Now, are they spying on you? You specifically? No, they're taking your. This is part of social engineering, where they're taking your search habits and appealing to you. And there are companies that pay big money for this, to be able to provide you with an advertisement that perhaps, if you're looking for a ceiling fan, they'll and there's a ceiling fan company out there, they'll pay to have ad placement.
Yeah,
via your search.
And let me give you an example of this. We have I have a sister here who has a friend who is here a lot, and she's starting a new career in the police academy. Well, all of a sudden, like the day after she starts, some of the Google ads change to, want a law enforcement career? Or you order a book off of Amazon, and you'll get a Google ad, books, something about books, or dog food if you have dogs. And if you really want, I wonder, without searching something on the internet and just by saying it out loud in your house, if you said it enough, if it would start to appear as an advertisement on your computer. I mean, this is how much they listen, how intently they listen, or whatever software it is that does this is tailored. It tailors the ads to you. We are definitely in a time, as the Bible says, when things are not, things are going to be way off, as in the times of Noah. And we are living in those times today. And as you said earlier, it could be a week, it could be 20 years. We don't know how long. But we are given instructions as what to do in these times that we live in. And those are simple. We are to continue to preach the word. We are told to remain faithful, to endure sound doctrine, and to love one another and continue and continue these behaviors no matter what's happening in the world. But how many will give in to that, to get away from the evil, to go to, and this is another thing, the UN Charter, the 10 Commandments, we talk about this. The New World Order people, the New Age people, have set up their own commandments. They're similar to the 10 Commandments, except they have removed God. So how easy would it be for somebody who is suffering and is just wants to be normal again, to say, you know what, to convince themselves? How many times do you find yourself justifying things to yourself that you shouldn't do, but you justify them so they sound okay in your mind? Say you're on a diet and you want to eat chocolate, and you'll fight that urge for days, and finally you'll say, it's just one piece. I imagine that's how this is going to be in the end. It's going to be so bad for those who are believers that many will say, you know what, I can't take it anymore. I'm going to go along with them. And that's scary to think about, because knowing people and humans and the human condition, we are weak. We really are. Many of us, if you're like me, the willpower lacks when you need it, unless you have that whole faith in the Lord. So that's why we always need to be, as it says in the scriptures, be vigilant, be sober, and never take your eyes off the Lord and your salvation. Because the second we take our eyes off the prize, we will fall. Just like Peter walking on the water. When he realized he's walking on the water, he fell right in.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, we're up against the top of the hour. This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for the 20th day of January 2014. Can you believe that next week is...
third and final hour tonight on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report Monday edition. We are going to open up with a story here, 2 quick stories, and then we're going right to the phones for the rest of the show. This today from Blacklisted News. Upcoming joint military drill off limits to reporters. In keeping with the ever-increasing trend of military and law enforcement cooperation and the growing prevalence of civilian police forces conducting drills with military forces, South Carolina's Richland County Sheriff's Office has announced that it will begin engaging in joint training exercises on Monday and Tuesday with unidentified units from Fort Bragg. The exercises are scheduled to take place on Monday and Tuesday and will run up to midnight on both days and will take place largely in Lower Richland near Eastover and Hopkins. Exercises are also planned for the areas of Screaming Eagle Road, Elgin, and North Richland County, very close to the outbound Monticello Road. Beyond this information, however, very little else is known about the upcoming shadowy training exercises. That is, except for the fact that they may be very loud and possibly alarming to the local residents, unprepared for or uninformed of them. According to the state newspaper, reporters will not be allowed to view or participate in the exercise. That's just funny, seeing how some unsuspecting residents might find themselves in the middle of it.
You know, Michael K., I'm not going to give out any more. Michael K. sent this. There's an article in The Guardian today. You're talking about military operations here. We know that, and we talked about this in the first hour. We know that Russian foreign troops are on our soil. They're training with our troops, right? Well, you understand, folks, that there is this terror threat against the Sochi Olympics, or Olympics in Sochi. Yeah. Okay. Now, it appears
another one. Yeah.
Well, but it appears that here in the United States, they're looking at plans to rescue Americans if terrorists strike in Sochi. And Michael K. points this out. He says, from reading the article in The Guardian, Putin won't let American troops on Russian soil, but there are Russian troops all over the United States training and getting the training and such. Isn't that interesting how that plays out? And then we've got this blackout, this media blackout.
Does it surprise you?
Well, no, but I think it's important. I really do. I think it's important. You see, why are we training other countries' military with our military hardware? Why are we doing this? There is indeed a concern here. Yet, isn't it funny how we can't train, or we can't go over to Russia, for example, in the event of some type of terrorist event? And don't forget, or please understand, the terrorist threats for Sochi are directly related to our involvement in the Middle East, Kerry's involvement in the Middle East. There is a connection, and I won't get it's too long of a conversation right now, but I believe for this venue right now, but there is indeed a connection between the terror threats in Sochi with the events in the Middle East and how those are playing out. And it's Putin is not willing to do anything until after the Olympics, and it's a whole long story. But please understand, nothing happens in a vacuum when it comes to the Middle East or terrorist attacks, especially from the Islamic side. So that said, by the way, 661-244-9839. We'll hear what's on your mind. If you can be rather succinct, we'd like to get a lot of callers in. That'd be really refreshing. But let's do that. 661-244-9839.
We're going to go to 617 first. 617. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Oh, thank you very much. This is Jeff calling from Chelsea, Massachusetts. Guys, how are you doing? So anyways, as far as what's coming to this country, you guys hit it right on the head. It's going to take longer than what people realize. And you know what? Read the material of Jeff Nyquist. And Jeff Nyquist got this from Viktor Suvorov and most likely other Russian defectors, which is there is 3 stages before a country goes full communist. The first stage is gray terror. second is pink terror, and the third is red terror. I believe that 9/11 was the gray terror stage, where Russia collaborated with Muslims to bring down the World Trade Center, where Spetsnaz was directly behind it. But pink terror, that's where a whole bunch of weapons of mass destruction is set off all over this country. We haven't hit that stage yet. You're going to see small gray terror-style attacks either by our own government, the Russians, the Chinese, and so forth. Then you will see the pink terror. We haven't hit that stage yet. The red terror means the full-out invasion. And what you're going to see is a bunch of financial shakeups, gang stalking, stuff like that, picking off of voices here and there, but nothing to get any ripples. You know what I'm saying, guys?
Very much.
Hello?
Yeah. No, there's a delay, Jeff. Yeah, very much. We understand what you're saying, and I think that we have to look at the long term. We have to fight the battle that's in front of us and strategize for what's down the road. And I think,
exactly.
I think it's event-driven, not necessarily date-driven. And so
I agree with
when
you.
people say, well, yeah, and the country itself, the people in this country have a lot of fight left in them. We also have, additional options, recourses yet available to us.
I agree.
So you're correct, I believe, in your assessment.
Also, too, demography determines destiny. Simply put, while there are still people over 60 years old in this country is still going to stay afloat. But once the Vietnam, the Vietnam veteran generation, the baby boomers, start dying off, then when they outlaw the firearms, then genocide's right around the corner. None of these things have happened yet. Yes, the NSA is like the Stasi, which I said on the Rush Limbaugh program, and so forth. But we're not quite there yet. You're not seeing people being dragged out of their houses and having their brains blown out. That's not happened yet. But when the attacks start happening and the economy starts going down, then watch out for that. That could be 10 to 20 years away or 30 years away. People that say we're in Matthew 24 are pretty much out to lunch. This is a Soviet plan, and it's going to take a lot of time. Guys, I thank you very much. God bless.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks.
And I just want to reiterate that we're talking about, things that might not be right around the corner. At the same time, it can be right around the corner. We don't know either way, but we're saying don't be, when talking with other people, don't run around saying the sky is falling right now. At the same time, don't sit back and assume we have time for, I can get saved tomorrow, or I can. Don't assume either way.
It's a very narrow, and I'll say this, it's a very, very, very narrow, in my view, a very narrow road that we have to progress down.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to the next call. We're going to go to area code 631. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. What's on your mind tonight? 631. 631 going once. All right, we'll put you up. Okay. Don't hear anything now.
Somebody just dove for their phone, apparently. All right.
928. You're up next. You are live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Good evening. I just have a response on the advertisements that we see pop up everywhere.
Sure.
And you guys have them in your bottom left column of your home page, and then on Blog Talk Radio, it's at the top, and on the top right column, and I think those are ad feeds. And a real good one, if you want to test it, is just go to Home Depot, and it pops up everywhere after that. And originally, when computers came... Pardon me?
I'm sorry. I've done that, and I was looking for a piece of hardware to fix a door that I've got, and I went to Home Depot, and for like a week, that's all I saw was Home Depot ads. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Right, everywhere. But when I first got into computers in the probably mid to late 1980s, I had stayed away from them because I thought they were from the devil. And ideally, I think they are. And I have given up cell phones. I don't use them at all anymore. But my business revolves around the Internet. You know, it's real hard to give that up. And what really irks me is, I was a leader in the chemtrail movement in the 2000s. And so still I get a few inquiries about things people can do and just general questions about chemtrails. And I've noticed after I send those emails out, it's like the next day, because I'm a person, I've been hacked and gone through all of this government intimidation and everything. So every night I unplug my DSL line from my computer, and I also unplug the power cord because they can remote in if there's power to it. I don't know that they can energize it, but then, so I power down every night, and sure enough, like 24 hours after I've mailed out those emails, then all of a sudden I've got 17 Windows updates that want to go on. And it says don't unplug your power cord or anything, but I do it anyway. And so I get by with that for a few nights, and then all of a sudden it just does it by itself, and it just puts the updates on whether I want them on there or not. That really irks me. And in the 80s, when I first got on computers professionally, it was all on DOS. And I knew every file that was on my computer. And my computer guy doesn't even know every file that's on my computer anymore. They have no way of knowing what all this stuff is. And it just happens automatically.
Okay. Have you seen the progression? Obviously, you've seen the progression of infiltration backdoors put into the systems. All systems have backdoors. Anything with software has a backdoor. Is that a correct statement, Pete, based on your experience with in the computer industry?
Well, certainly the operating systems, Windows most definitely does, and Macs used to be safer, but now they are part of the scheme as well. And my son is a computer consultant. He recommends different operating systems. And I don't know why I haven't changed to him. I guess just because a lot of the software may not work with it. And my industry revolves around computers, you know. And so as a lot of people, I mean, you guys would be hard to operate without a computer.
Yeah,
but realistically,
yes.
And getting rid of the beast, that's one thing I think we need to get rid of is our computers and get offline. But that's also a big tool.
Yes.
Yeah, but then we wouldn't be connected with each other.
Well, what about the telephone? What about personal contact? We're losing that. And I've done this. I've been in my house. I've been in one part of my house, and I've got a small house. And I've been in one part of my house, and my wife's been in another part of the house. And we at one point, I sent her a message on her cell phone. I don't have a cell phone, but from my computer to her cell phone to make an inquiry about something. Now that's the epitome of laziness, and oh my goodness. But I mean, we've sacrificed personal contact. We've sacrificed for convenience. We've sacrificed personal contact and getting up and talking to people face to face. And I think that's it's horrible. Let's get back to the Mayberry environment where you go into the bank instead of checking your balance online. How safe is that, too? How safe is making transactions online? Is that safe?
It isn't for me. I've had on my debit card, I don't even use credit cards anymore, but my debit card, shortly after making a purchase from Amazon, it was probably about 5 days later, all of a sudden all the money in my bank account was gone and I was overdrawn. And so I started looking at it. None of the charges were mine. And the bank, of course, eventually reversed them all, but I asked them, why did you let them charge more than I had in there? You don't let me do that. How did they get these charges through to overdraw it by $500. It just doesn't make sense. And of course, they have to verify that it's not yours, and it takes about 10 days or so to get your money back. So, yeah, it's a
real
inconvenience.
All good points. Very good.
Thank you. You guys keep up the good work.
Thanks. Appreciate your call. Appreciate your call. Yeah, you know what, Joe? It's something where if we could, I mean, and isn't that how it will be with perhaps the chipping process? You see, can you just see it now, where everyone is given a card, like a credit card, an identity card. That's, of course, think of your Social Security card, except the 2014 or 2015 version, where it's all digitized on the back, kind of like a license that's got all your information. And then somebody or people lose that card, or suddenly there's this spike in identity fraud, and that card is misused. Well, what's the next step after that? Well, let's go into something implantable so they can't lose it. It's a matter of convenience. And think of how convenient this would be. Can you just see the marketing? Can you see how that would be marketed?
Yeah. Well, at that point, it just doesn't. Once that's introduced, it's over. Who cares? I mean, the people that will be left here and be able to buy or sell or whatever, let them have at it. Why even have things that cost money after that? Their souls are already captured, and there's not much that nothing they can do to.
By the way, I just want to let people know this, folks. You're hearing this for the first time. Ken Shorgen is going to be on with us Wednesday from 9 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, giving a 30-minute or so or an hour economic update. He wrote an article recently at Rogue Money and also at the Examiner, examiner.com, an article over the weekend. And, folks, I just want to point this out because we were talking about this earlier today. The gold market, we could see a default and fail to deliver as early as this February. Now, think about that and the ramifications about that. And in the same vein, if I saw a piece, I think somebody sent this to me, I'm not sure, where Glenn Beck was talking about the fact that, the United States, we were supposed to provide Germany with their gold. We said, well, it would take about 7 years. And remember that? That was just last year. And, of course, they got some gold that... why do you think, for example, that there's stampings on gold bars and such? Well, it's to identify that the gold is yours. Well,
yeah, we talked about this.
Yeah, bottom line, they got their gold, some of their gold,
and it was not 100 or 99.9.
Exactly. And he said this. He said that not only. Well, the federal government says, okay, it's going to take, or the Fed, it's going to take 7 years to get your gold back, and we'll ship, I don't know, X amount of gold out here in a few weeks, in which they did, but the gold was short. So they didn't get what they were promised. That's number one, and all of what they promised. And number two is what they did get was was not the purity that it was supposed to be, and they had melted it down before sending it out and recast the gold into different bars. So, and Mr. Beck had equated it as being, well, if you have a safety deposit box, think of it as you go into the bank and you put in your jewelry, we'll say a wedding ring, in your safety deposit box. And the wedding ring also has an inscription on it. And it's, we'll say, 24-karat gold, which it wouldn't be, but let's say it is. And then you go back to the safety deposit box, and they either say, well, you cannot see what's in your box. Mm-hmm. That's the equivalent of saying, no, you can't see what's in the vaults. Or they give you, instead of your wedding ring, they give you a ring of lesser purity without the markings on it, without the inscription on it, and say, yeah, this is yours. It doesn't make any sense. So Ken Shorgen had wrote in the Examiner, gold market could see a default and failed to deliver as early as February. Now, he writes that Eric Sprott spoke in an interview with King World News on the new revelations of gold price manipulation and the groundbreaking discovery that a large financial regulator in Germany has publicly announced that there's evidence of central bank coercion in the futures market. There's an 18-minute interview Sprott reinforced the fact that commodity markets like the COMEX and LBMA were short incredible amounts of physical metal in comparison to the number of paper contracts that they have on the books. So I would equate it this way. It'd be like every single person, every single depositor of a bank showing up at the bank all at once to take out their money. They're not going to get it. Or everyone asking for physical delivery of their gold. Do you think that they're going to get physical delivery? No, not at all, because we're part of the Ponzi scheme. Dealers have something like 11 tons of gold on the COMEX. Now think about that, 11 tons. China imports about 100 tons a month. 11 tons is really nothing in comparison. February is a big delivery month. Last year, it was 40 tons. If it's 40 tons this February, there are going to be a lot of contracts outstanding. And that's from Eric King in a King World interview. So if you look at what analysts like Peter Schiff, Eric Sprott are saying, whistleblowers like Andrew McGuire, what they've been telling the public, and the markets of gold manipulation by entities such as J.P. Morgan Chase, the COMEX, the LBMA, or COMEX, depending on what part of the country you're from, several major central banks to protect the petrodollar, their congregation of currencies. That's what's at stake here with China's major push to buy any and all physical gold available in the markets. Supplies have dwindled to almost nothing. That also, and I did not know this, but Germany's Deutsche Bank, that led Germany, their Deutsche Bank, to close their primary metals desk and also force J.P. Morgan Chase to limit their exposure to gold futures and deliveries. So we're seeing a crunch right now for gold. This year is going to be supposedly the year, or at least as far as several financial analysts and economists have predicted, you're going to see a global meltdown, and many of them continue. Even today, are pointing at the first quarter as the time frame. And again, I'm not big on time frames, but if this is in the offing, perhaps it could be as soon as February, maybe, as Ken Shorjan has stated, folks. So that's going to be an important interview Wednesday, and of course tomorrow we've got Stan Dale.
Excellent. Looking forward to that. Mr. Shorjan was great last time, and can't wait to get him back on and pick his brain again. Okay, we're going to go to 305 next. Thanks for holding. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hi.
Good evening.
Hi. Well, I guess I wanted to take it in a different direction here just for a minute and go off on the bloodlines in who exactly is the president, and I guess I'll say it kind of is a mystery of to who Stanley Armour Dunham is. He seems to have quite a mysterious background with possibly Black Ops, CIA, maybe MI5, KGB, who knows, multi-agent, whatever. But what's interesting, what really piqued my interest is recently, I think Dr. Jim Garrow mentioned this person, Barack Obama. He's living in China, and he's been involved with helping the Chinese orphans and stuff. And he's quite a talented man, and he's the president's supposed half-brother. But the president really denied ever meeting him. However, there's a picture of Barack Obama and his wife, who's Chinese, and the president from 2009. The interesting part that I find is that these two men, Barack Obama and President Obama, look really a lot alike. I mean, to the point where they could actually be twins. What interests me is supposedly they have different mothers and the same father, Barack Obama Sr., but neither men look at all like the father, okay? But they look alike.
Right, and for those people who don't know this, Mark DeSandro, or Ndesandjo, I don't even know how you pronounce that. Mark Obama is the half brother of Barack Hussein Obama. Just so people know, a lot of people never knew that.
My thoughts are the two women, Stanley Ann Dunham and Ruth Baker, the actual mothers of these two boys? Or could it possibly be that the two boys actually have a racial mother of a black or whatever from Africa, and a white father? Maybe the father is the key. Okay, maybe I know the president supposedly referred to his grandfather, who he called Gramps, as his father twice, according to Wayne Madsen. And also, he never referred to his grandmother as grandmother. He called her Toots. Now that's kind of odd in itself. Okay.
Okay.
I'm just saying there's a real odd connection here. It's like this grandfather was supposed to be a furniture salesman, but they've scrubbed his history. Okay, and it's like a whole bureau full of left socks here. Okay, nothing matches.
I've been there trying to find a match to a sock. Yeah, and you're right.
I'm just saying there's something really weird, and everybody seems to go from Kenya to all of these elitist colleges like Stanford and Harvard and Columbia, and
who knew?
All I know is I busted my butt to put my daughter through state college, okay, and it was tough, okay, and I did the prepay college fund and all of that, but I'm just saying, I don't know where these people get this money to come out of, and what is it with this goat herder, Barack Obama Sr.? What was he? What is he? The love man or something? I mean, everybody was just magically attracted to this guy and couldn't wait to run off to Kenya. I mean, what? So that's all I wanted to say. I'm just saying the bloodline is very odd. It traces back to really odd ends here, and everybody seems to not match up. But how you got two guys that look exactly alike that don't look at all like the supposed father. Okay? I mean...
you're right.
Okay, that's it. Well, thanks.
Thank you. Right, man. And we're going to...
this... I got to tell you, man, this does get into some pretty serious... this caller is not wrong.
There's a lot of unanswered questions and odd things that are associated with that family, and I don't think we'll ever get the true
Just one thing real quick, and think about this. Think about Bill Clinton. Who was his father? Who was his mother? We know who his mother was, but there's a lot of suggestion, and I'm going to tell you right now, looking at the anecdotal evidence about Bill Clinton, his father was more likely a Rothschild. Just look into that. And look at what Bill Clinton's mother was saying and doing, spouting off at the racetrack, and all of a sudden she passes. Coincidental timing? Well, you be the judge. There's a lot of interesting things. Look at the family trees. Look at the... you don't think bloodlines matter? They absolutely do matter in the scheme of this dynasty, the Rothschild and Rockefeller dynasty, and the bloodlines and the satanic bloodlines. They may not matter to you, but they matter to them. Just saying. So there you go.
Going to the next call. Area code 304. We're coming to you now. What's on your mind tonight?
Hello, gentlemen. This is Phil from West Virginia.
Hi, Phil.
Oh. How you doing down there?
Well, it's good to talk to you guys again. How did we get here?
Well, by car, at least in my case. In the studio. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. How did we get here? And that's what we explore. I mean, we need to look at the history of how we got here and where we are. You're very good question.
Where we are, I mean, people, and they say, well, you got 20 years and it's going to be this and it's going to be that. You don't know. It's like Joe was saying earlier. Things could change in a heartbeat. Mm-hmm. That's how fast things can change.
That's right.
You know, things, and they're already, they don't have all this set up for no reason at all. That could happen any time. So anybody that says, well, you know, we have this and that and this and that to do, no, you don't. Not the way I look at it anyway. I mean, it's ready. And what is ready is the people. And that's what's not going to change. You can't change them. That's how we got here. How did we really get here is by years and years of lies, years of watching TV and taking other people's opinions and this and that. But the people aren't going to change at this point. They're going to do what they're told to do. And that's sad.
That is sad.
Yes. No, there's two, and thank you for being so astute to ask the question. A lot of people won't even really sit down, or a lot of people don't have the intellectual curiosity to ask how we got here, or the intellectual interest into to ask where are we going and why we're going there. The only thing I would say about this is it can happen at any time. Yes, I agree with that. But if look at what happened with Syria. Look at how we pushed, and when I say we, I'm talking about the new media, I pushed to expose Benghazi for what it was. Did we make a difference? I think we did, and I think we forced them into a contingency plan. They're still at it. They're still going for it. So we bought some time. But I think that there are events that have to take place, ideally, in the game book, in their playbook. Can they toss the playbook aside and go for the throat right away? Perhaps. But if they follow along the playbook, I think we've got some real estate to cover yet. But I'll stipulate that they could toss that aside and go right for the throat. But that would be ugly and perhaps unnecessary. I don't know. I guess I would caution against making any type of definitive statements either way.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just that I've been seeing this coming for a long time. But you're kind of like like a watchman on a tower, and you're in a citadel, and you've got your doors closed, and you got your walls. And they just keep pounding and pounding and pounding. They don't stop 24/7. They do not stop. They do not rest. And when one of them gets tired, another one takes up, and they just keep pounding and pounding away.
Yeah. And they won't stop until they have what they want.
Until they get inside. Well, they may get what they don't want.
Well, that's true. Now, in your analogy, we're in the tower. We're looking out and assessing the ground before us. We can see the cloud, that dust cloud, down the way a bit. A lot of times, and this is the first hour we were talking about. A lot of times, people will focus on that dust cloud and not focus on the threat, the most immediate threat, right underneath them against the outer wall. That you know what I'm saying? So it's easy to become mesmerized by the dust cloud, and by doing you're not paying attention to what's right underneath you at that outer wall, attempting to breach into that outer wall. So that's the only point I was trying to make.
Yeah. Well, you guys just keep up the good work. I so enjoy listening to you guys and your guests and everything. And I've been listening to Dave Hodges on Sunday nights, and boy, he has some couple more good guests last night. I'll tell you what, he's just
I missed him last night. Who do you have on?
The lady, the whistleblower from the World Bank.
Okay, Karen Hoods. Right.
Yeah, and boy, that was, and she's kind of like listening to the spaceman, you know. She got her down, I'll tell you.
Oh, yes. In fact, we're going to have her on. I'm just waiting for a couple of confirmations and a couple of different things to happen. So that's kind of in the works.
Well, good. Yeah, she was wonderful at. Or just you need to listen to it twice or three times just to grasp everything that she was saying. She definitely knows what she's talking about.
Okay, fantastic.
You guys, keep man in the tower.
we're on the tower, and yes, we will. Will you keep in touch and keep safe down there in West Virginia? God bless, my friend.
God bless you.
Interesting call. And you know, it's how many times have we thought, how did we get here, and where are we going, where are we headed, and then looking at this kind of taking a few steps back, and how many people, ordinary people, don't do that, don't make it a personal or an assessment of not even a personal assessment, an assessment of the territory in which they live.
Being self-absorbed, being not having an understanding or faith in the Lord, let alone an understanding of what He has given us as far as.
Well, even aside from that, though, I think you're captured by the Super Bowl, by the playoffs, by the movies, by the iPhones, by the electronics. I mean, I don't want to take the Lord out of this, but what I'm saying is, just on a secular level, you're so far removed, but by the distractions.
Absolutely, and even further, if the people who are seeing what's going on and understanding, the majority of them, I would say, have a belief in God, and that their belief in God has given them the ability to see through the lies that are being put in their face. Whereas the people who have faith in nothing, or no faith, no foundation, they are more likely to just go with the flow, believe whatever, and not pay attention nor care.
No, that's true. You've got to have that spiritual nugget of motivation, I believe, to really get to the bottom line. And once again, this is why we do this.
315. We're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hello, gentlemen.
Good evening.
I start off with this thing about the nuclear weapons that Obama was going to pull off the military, stop some of the military. Where was he going to be when he brought down the U.S. with EMPs and put everything out of order? What did he plan on being?
I'm not sure.
That's a good question. I don't know. I'm not sure that we got that far deep into the discussion. Now, I think are you referencing what Jim Garrow had said on the 1st of January, our show there, or?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, look, that's a good question. I don't know.
A question you don't know.
Well, if you think about this, how would you even go about to prove that was an agenda in play? I'm not taking. I'm not saying what Mr. Garrow had said was not true. I'm just saying, how do you prove that?
Right.
And yeah, it's just difficult. I don't know. I don't know. Look. I'll tell you right flat out. I don't have a clue.
I think you'd almost have to be rely on his integrity as far as having really good sources, or I don't think he would have come out with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I've gotten a lot of emails about, is Jim Garrow, what's his reputation? Is he a good source of information? I see a lot of stuff on the internet, bad stuff on the internet about him, and hardly anything good. Well, I cannot respond to all the emails I get about him because, number one, if you were truly an undercover operative or somebody outside of the openness you're not going to have a lot of stuff on the internet about you. Okay, it's like being a private investigator. You're private. You privately investigate things. It's not an overt investigation. So, by the very nature of what he says he was, and I've seen, by the way, I have seen some things to suggest, yes, he was an operative with the CIA. Now, at what level? I don't know. I mean, it's as simple as that. And you've got to, at some point, you've got to make your own evaluation. We'll bring you the guest, or we'll bring you the person. You make your own evaluation. Not you, sir. I mean, I'm not saying this, in any derogatory fashion. I'm just saying the listeners have to make their own evaluation. And we had so many requests to bring him on because of what he was saying. Well, we did for a 3-hour interview. And I've got no reason to doubt his bona fides from what I've seen, from what he allowed me to see. So now, is his information accurate? I believe he believes it's accurate based on the information he has been shown. Could he be gamed?
It's always possible, but
man, it's who do you believe anymore? We fight this every day. I don't know. I didn't mean to take your time up, caller. Go ahead and continue.
No, fine. More. One thing other than the nuclear thing, I heard that when under martial law, the government starts, the boys start, they're going to plan mass assassinations and cause outright civil war. But here's an interesting thing, that they will use modern weapons that will render conventional weapons useless. And also that under this, another thing under the nuclear thing, that they would be out of the country before it happened, key people. And they would be then the people who are going to bring down martial law and do things and start a lot of trouble. They would be giving them directions, but they would be out of the country, especially under the nuclear thing. So the thing about rendering people's weapons useless by some of these high-tech modern weapons that maybe we don't even know about.
Well, caller, let me ask you this. If they're able to do that, are they not able to render you or me or us useless by a push of a button, a specific weapon, like that could, hey, if it work, or if their weapon can render ours useless, could they not just step it up a notch and make us just stains on the pavement?
Oh yeah, sure. I'll say they have these high frequency weapons they can point at you, from what I understand, and cause have the body to have all kinds of aches and pains and cause swelling in the brain. So they have some high tech things out there, and it sure would be interesting. Another thing, does Steve Quayle have any DVDs, or do you guys have DVDs of Steve Quayle's, or anything on underground bases or cities, or on high tech weapons? Something that seems really reliable.
We don't have any. I don't think Steve has any DVDs. I don't think he has any CDs or any type of audio or visual items that he has created. There might be some stuff out there on the internet that he's been a part of, but no. I'll tell you that was with a certainty.
The last thing on the structural beams on 9/11 on the Twin Towers. What is the theory behind them turning into powder? Have you heard anything at all?
Boy, which theory?
I mean, there's not much structural steel left after the buildings come down, and I'm sure there was massive. And an interesting thing I found out. I went to Barnes and Noble, and they don't have any books on the building, the construction of the Twin Towers. It seems like there would be, and they don't have any DVDs showing the construction of the buildings. And that made me wonder. You know what I mean?
Well, I know that there is some open source information about the construction back in the 70s of the Twin Towers.
And I have on 9/11 seen actual broadcasts of the construction, like they do the remembering the towers, and part of those, some of those had shown the from different documentaries the construction of the towers. Now I don't know if they're still all available publicly or not, but there's definitely huge problems with what happened there, and it is not as we were told by the government. And that's for the one for sure thing I do know about 9/11.
Well, how did they pulverize the structural steel?
Well, there are numerous theories out there. I've got a book. In fact, we interviewed Dr. Judy Wood.
Yeah, on weapon, on some
Where
type
did
of
the towers go?
Yeah, nuclear weapon. Then you have thermite. Then you have the thermite theory. There's many theories out there. Some even say that there weren't planes or even towers. But obviously we know better than that, that whatever they did use was something we probably won't even ever come to know.
At some point, you just have to say the official accounting of the 9/11 Commission, the official accounting of the structural aspect of what happened, is we know that it's not correct or it's not legitimate, as the NIST reports and other reports had said. So what's left? If they lied about that, what else are they lying about? Wow, we could spend days talking about this. The architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, they've got some great information. Dr. J.D. Wood's got some great information. Who's to say that any one, maybe it's multiple, maybe it's directed energy as well as thermite. Maybe it's a combination of things. And if we don't know that perhaps an energy weapon exists, and this is getting out there, but if we don't know that one exists, how can we say that it caused the destruction, the pulverization of the tower? So there's a lot of things,
Do you fellows have a number for Judy Wood? Telephone number at all?
Not handy. I don't.
Can I talk to you off air? Can I get a hold of you off air?
The best way to do this would be to send an email.
I don't have a computer. I'm age 72. I know nothing about computers.
Oh,
so
okay.
What do I do?
I'll tell you what.
You got my number there. You want to give me a call? And
Joe, do you have the number? All right, we'll take. Okay, boy, live radio at its finest. Yeah, Joe's got your number. We'll take it down. We will. Joe will contact you here within the next 24 hours. Give us a day or so. We're up against a lot of things taking place right now.
I won't take up your time when you call. Just a quick 1-minute call.
Okay, very good. Your first name?
David.
David. Okay. So we know. Okay, so we know who to ask for. All right, my friend. God bless. Thank you for the call.
Thanks for your.
All right. Oh, sorry, Dave. Cut you off there. We're going to get in one more call, as we have about 8 minutes left. We're going to go to area code 903. 903. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. 903.
All right.
Let's try this. 406. We're coming to you now. 406 are the last call of the evening.
No, they're not. No, they're not.
Okay, one more time. We're going to try this last number. 970. We're coming to you. 970, you're live on the Hagmann.
Glad to hear nobody was on the other end.
Well, glad you're here. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I wanted to say, man, I sure love you guys' program, and I love almost all your guests. But this is kind of for Doug, I guess. I heard Doug earlier on the program say that you're not supposed to set dates or time. Did I hear that correct?
Well, I think relying on a certain time or a specific time period is perhaps not the best way to go about things. I think that we have to look at things a little different than time itself. Why? Do you have something perhaps that you want to say about that?
Well, I guess it was maybe 6 weeks back. You had Steve Quayle, and who I absolutely love to hear, and believe everything that he talks about. But back about 6 weeks ago, he was on with, who was it, Greg Iverson?
Greg Evenson.
Evenson?
Right.
They were both on your show at the same time there, and they were talking about a big trouble that was going to hit Colorado, and they were coming right out and saying it was going to happen like in 30 to 45 days. And thank God it has not happened, but, that was kind of given out the time.
Yeah, and that's not to take Steve or Greg to task for that. This is what we run into a lot, and in fact, I've talked to Steve about this too. And when we set out when we say, look, there's a plan in place for this to happen, and it's supposed to happen. I'll just going to pick a date arbitrary by February 15th. We'll say, all right, just for an example. Okay. A lot of times, there are things that happen in the meantime that push that particular date back, or the plans change. The objectives don't change, but the plans change. So, and what happens is a lot of people will be fatigued by this constant date setting. But say, okay, well, this is going to happen the dollar's going to collapse by February 15th or whatever, and it doesn't happen. And after like 3, 4, 5 times of that, people get like, okay, you told me this before, it didn't happen. And the message begins to become, the people stop listening to the message. It's not because the information's bad, it's because the date setting has been impacted by other events. So it would be better to say, well, the dollar is going to be killed off when this happens, that happens, and this happens. At least that's the current playbook. Okay, so that's what we're saying. That's what I was saying initially. Okay. But again, that's not to take anything away from Steve or Greg.
Right, and then also our Secretary of State, John Kerry, he's been kind of more or less hell-bent to get a peace agreement between Israel and Palestine, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
And what do you say, by your knowledge of Scripture, what does that mean once they have this temporary peace agreement signed between the two? What does that mean to you?
Well, it means what exactly it says in the Bible. If they have a peace agreement, I would start with Daniel. Daniel's an excellent place to.
But Joe, are they talking about this peace agreement? You see that now?
Okay,
that's a great question.
Well, let me ask this: when's the last time they've had a peace agreement since the founding of Israel?
Well, there have been. Look at the Camp David Accords.
No, I mean, let me rephrase that: an agreement, a two-state solution, peace agreement, where they maybe take land from Israel, divide Israel, or
well, they've already taken land and they've divided somewhat, and we saw that with the Gush Katif settlement. And but to actually implement a two-state solution and divide Jerusalem, I suppose that would take it to an entirely different level. And Caller, that's probably what you're referring to. Yeah, now we're talking some prophetic utterances here and some scriptural references. I think Psalm 83 comes into play. And I think perhaps the Psalm 83 wars are going to have to take place before Ezekiel 17 would, but then that's just my interpretation. Do not rely on my interpretation.
Well, in Daniel 9:27, it says, "And he shall enter into strong and firm covenant with many for 1 week, or some say 7 years. In the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and offering to cease." That is interpreted differently by some, but that's one biblical reference. And it also the peace and safety is a big thing. That when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh. A peace agreement will start off the Great Tribulation, and in the midst of the peace agreement, the Antichrist will reveal himself. That much I know. As far as anything else, I would have to go back and continue to study and see what I can find.
Well, my only thought is that if this peace agreement is so near as it appears to be, if it does come true, then I see it as the start of the 7-year tribulation period, which that's not very far off, and that's not a real long period of time.
No.
So a lot of these possibilities of things happening, like so many of your guests talk about on your show, they are going to happen rather quickly. So,
well, yeah, but that's a very subjective statement too.
Caller, we got about